I need to smack my pen.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, the full board meeting to order. For all those who care to join me, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So, Betty, please note that Tricia is not here, Stephanie is not here.
Wow. We're all good.
It's okay.
That's right. Is Karen on?
We don't have Karen.
We don't have Karen yet. And you'll note for Betty when she arrives. Okay. I'd like to read our board norms. Debate, commentary, and discussion are healthy and open. Listening and speaking are equally important, and both should be done with respect and consideration. Focus is on students and our schools, not politics. Assume best intentions in all discussions. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda passes. So need a motion to, do you want to make a motion to pull out
I'd like to make a motion to pull out the Finance and Planning Committee meeting minutes due to one quick error in there.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Can we approve the consent agenda minus those meeting minutes?
So moved.
Meeting.
Second.
minutes?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So do you want to?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Finance and Planning Committee meeting minutes with one minor change that the date was November 7th, 2023, and not November 3rd, 2023.
I don't know about that one.
Anybody want to second that motion?
Discussion about that? Yeah, discuss it.
We don't remember what date we met.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Great.
So,
Thanks,
public
Ted.
input. Do we have anyone who would like to speak? Going once, going twice. Okay. Bob is going to talk to us about the Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
So you might expect that I'm going to speak to you, but what I'm really going to do is introduce Joan Gamble. Joan comes to us to talk about the work of the Rutland Free Library and the Dolly Parton Imagination Library program that she brought to us some time ago, back in 2021 with some others, and about what it means and its success. And she's asked for a few minutes to present to you and the community about it. So take it away, Joan Gamble.
And I am going to pass around handouts because I have a lot to say, and he said I should not use very much time. So you can follow along, and I'll cover some of these points and some other points. The Imagination Library at the Rutland Free Library mails free new books every month, age-appropriate books, to children who have enrolled. And it's open to any children birth to their 5th birthday who reside in the 5 cities served by 5 towns, actually. 1 city and 4 other towns served by the library. And we started mailing the first books in April 2021, and we've mailed over 11,000 free books to children. Very cool. And 3/4 of those books have been mailed to children. They're not yet students, but children in Rutland City. So we offer this cost-effective program in conjunction with Dolly Parton Imagination Library. And what's interesting is 1 in 10 eligible kiddos throughout the country participate in the Dolly Parton Imagination Library now, so it's very cool. So what the Dolly Parton Imagination Library does is any child who's enrolled in their book ordering system, they mail the book directly to the child in the child's name at their home. And the books are chosen by a group of experts and looked at annually what books are age appropriate, etc. And if a child participates the whole time, they have a library of 60 free books. Wow. As a local affiliate, our responsibility is to enroll the kids, promote the program as much as possible, and raise the money to pay for the books and their mailing, which is quite cost-effective, $2.20 per child per month, and other program costs, which are pretty low because it's all of a volunteer-run program. What we really focus on, our goal is to get every child who meets these criteria to participate. But what we really focus on are getting at-risk children to participate. And so the way that we do that is we work with all the agencies in the community to encourage them to sign kids up. That's one big way. The other thing that we do is that we're very visible at local events. An example is just recently they had the back-to-school welcome nights at, and we did go to both Northeast and Northwest and signed up another 18 kids, the younger siblings of those going to school. And then we also have our own events. Our last event, we had 60 people. So since launching the program, Rutland City Schools has been a very good partner with us. So every month, we produce a roster of the children that are in Rutland City Schools. We send that roster to Bliss, and he pays out of Title I funding for the cost of the books and the mailing for those children, the $2.20. And you can see on page 2 the amount that the school has contributed for each of the fiscal years. The 2024 fiscal contributions, if we look at a full year, because we feel like we're at about the level we expect to be. So we expect it to be about $8,355 for a full year, both for fiscal year 2024 and going forward for just the mailing to the Rutland City kids. So what are funders getting for their money? It's an incredibly cost-effective program. When I heard about it, I did a lot of due diligence, and it can't be beat. They have a lot of evidence showing how it impacts both kindergarten readiness, which is the biggest outcome measure that they have, but also the interactions that caregivers have with their children. Like, one of the cool things is, this is a book you may recognize, but that in the beginning of the books that are sent, it has some instructions for parents of how to read to their child. This is especially important for some of the cardboard books that they get for the infants, because it may be families where the parents were never read to and they don't really have a lot of books or know how to do it. So it gives really fun interactions of, point to the moon, and, So I think it's very helpful for parents. We don't yet see the impact on Rutland City kindergarten readiness because the last study was in the latest statistics are 2021-2022 school year, and so the program was not going enough to have an impact yet. But the Dolly Parton Imagination Library has a database of 41 different research projects. And they show for different states or different areas, school districts, the kindergarten readiness scores improving, but also a couple of the studies that I mentioned here show how they follow children who participated versus those who did not. And they could see an increase in performance, not only in kindergarten, but for years afterwards. So it's really an amazing program, and I could go on talking and talking, but I'll open it up to questions because I know you have a full agenda, but thank you very much for giving me a few minutes. Any questions, comments?
Can I add something? I would add just one piece about the funding that we use. We could use Title I, but currently what we use, the school district gets universal pre-K dollars in, and we cut a supply line out of that, and we use that to fund that. So it's a big help. And I really appreciate, we hear from Joan all the time, and Cheryl Hooker also, who's a big supporter.
Yeah, she's one of our volunteer team. We have a great volunteer team, yes.
I have a question, and this may be a little off subject, but you just said we get universal pre-K funds in. Does the school actually have pre-K?
I'd love to give you a lesson at some point about Act 166 and Vermont's Universal Pre-K program and how the funds flow through.
I know
school
some
districts.
about it, but our district doesn't offer it, correct?
We do have one universal pre-K in district, but then also what you do is you have numerous and any partner pre-K across the state. We do not restrict the boundaries of our region. So any student who can register with us and then find a universal pre-K spot, we actually flow money through us to the pre-K partner.
Gotcha.
And it offsets the expense for the family as well as supports a licensed educator at the pre-K site. And it also has a supply line which we can use to support pre-K learning, like this program.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it's pretty complicated.
I think it's wonderful, the program that you have. I think it's great that the kids are reading. I think even more importantly, I like the parents reading to the kids at really early age, 'cause I think it's great bonding, but also showing them, the love of reading and
Right.
stories like that. But one of my questions, it might be a silly question, is some children, how do you keep up with like maybe addresses, and if they move, like how do they get their books, and how does that work?
Great question. So one of the details that's in here is, in addition to the cost of mailing the books, we have to pay the post office to get change of address information. And then we track that change of address. If they have moved somewhere within the 5 towns, then they will continue participating. If they move outside, they will continue participating through a different program if there's a program offered in their area. One of the things that we found, especially with our Rutland City children, is that there is a lot of movement that we can't necessarily keep track of. And that's why we want to keep talking to, for example, DCF or other agencies that might be working. So let's say a child is in foster care and they move from one foster family to another. We're not going to know that unless somebody informs us. And the program I didn't mention, so I'm really sorry, I'm going to take the opportunity to, we have a special collaboration with the Homeless Prevention Center, because one of the things that we have, especially in the city, but also, Rutland Town, is children who are in families experiencing homelessness, and so they don't have a steady address. So with the books that we pay for the post office to send them back to us, so we do have some extra books. So with these books, we take them to the Homeless Prevention Center, and then they hand them out to children who are families are experiencing homelessness. We also do have many children who have signed up who are living in the hotels or motels. And we do try to follow them. When families sign up, we also have an email and a phone number for the parents, and our administrator, Martha Ide, who's wonderful, she does follow up, seeing if we can get a new address, or seeing if the people want to get the books that they missed because they were moving. So we have a lot of work trying to make sure and really hit every child and deal with those issues. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yes.
Do you have a fundraising goal, and how close are you to that goal?
So right now, the total cost of the program is around $14,000 a year. Now that we're fully kind of at the level that we expect to be fully saturated. And why I say saturated is because every month children, quote unquote, graduate. They turn 5. And so when they turn 5, they're no longer part of the program. They get the final book, Look Out Kindergarten, Here I Come. But it takes constant work to constantly be getting children in. And Dolly Parton gave us, a way, if you look at the demographics, what they think is steady state. And we think that we're about at steady state. So with that $14,000 a year, we've been very successful with the United Way, the 2 Rotary Clubs, M&T Bank gave us. GE employees had a pie eating contest, $2,200 from that. Who knew? So we now have enough to get us through this year and part of next year. And that is counting on about Rutland City School District continuing with paying for the books and the mailing, which is about 60% of the overall program costs.
We pay that for Rutland City children.
Just for Rutland City children, verified children with the, verified address and all of that. Even though it's 75% of the children are Rutland City, because they're not paying the extra costs of the returned books, and their change of address for, post office charges, for lots of post office charges. Any other questions or suggestions how to get the word out?
Doing a good job right now.
Thank you, this sounds great.
Sounds
Thank
like
you
a
so
great
much.
program. Thank you.
Awesome program.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. And we'll move into our student representative reports.
RMS would like to acknowledge Ollie Brown, our esteemed STEAM integrationist, for his nomination for Teacher of the Year. He and Mr. Becker are in Burlington at the award ceremony as we speak. Our amazing science teachers held their 2nd annual Creepy Chemistry Night at the end of October. It was well attended and enjoyed by all. Our staff, led by Chris Van Skyver, is working hard on our Community Resource and Coffee House Night on January 16th. We will have vendors who can offer services and support to our students and their families. We will serve a hot meal, have a live food bank, and clothes closet in addition to students' performance and poetry readings. Please mark it on your calendars and join us for the event. Allen Street campus is preparing for our winter activities as we wrap up biking on campus. To ensure that our bikes are ready for spring, students have started repairing and maintaining their bikes with the guidance of Rutland City Bikes. Recently, our students had the chance to collaborate with a resident artist and learn some street art techniques. In preparation for this week's PPLC chili cook-off, students have started preparing their chili recipes, which will win. Next week, we'll be joined by our families and students for Thanksgiving sandwiches and some community building before our holiday break. Last week, Stafford's entire school community went out to rake the lawns of about 28 elderly and disabled neighbors as part of our school-wide day of service. Each homeowner received a freshly baked apple pie from our culinary arts program. Upon returning to campus, we all enjoyed a pizza luncheon, also prepared by our culinary arts program. Recruiting is underway for about 24 for the 24 to 25 school year. We have visited each of our partner schools over the past week, presenting about Stafford, and we will be hosting sophomore visits on Monday and Tuesday before sophomore break, and the Tuesday after break. In total, we expect about 650 sophomores to visit our programs over the 3 days. It is a very busy time of year at Stafford. RHS would like to congratulate the Learning Program who requested and were awarded a grant from the McClure Foundation to purchase the Pathful Explore program, which includes virtual job shadowing, assessments, resume builders, employability content, career profiles, and college/job search tools.
November is all about gratitude at RIS. We were proud to host a moving Veterans Day assembly honoring past and current veterans. A special thank you to Ms. Baker, Mr. Myers, and Ms. Luzader for all their efforts in planning the event, and to Ms. Kramer for helping to decorate the auditorium. We are also grateful to have Adam Brua as our technology teacher. Adam has been selected as one of 10 ISTE educators to participate in their 2023 AI video project. He is currently creating a video that details how he teaches artificial intelligence concepts to our students. In early December, the videos will be aired during a global AI webinar, and he will participate in a Q&A with other educators from across the world afterward. We are very excited for Mr. Brewer and all this opportunity has to offer him and our students. October at Northeast was eventful. We were grateful to have hosted Jill Vitagliano from Mindful Monkey Yoga for our October Pause Assembly, centered on mindfulness, and she led our whole school through a few mindful exercises. Our Northeast Fall Festival is mid-October. In mid-October was a great success thanks to so many community partnerships: Stafford Technical Center, Jones Donuts, Brown's Orchard, Come Alive Outside, and our Rutland Fire Department. Our students and staff had a blast. Early in October, our second graders attended a tour of our little city and visited the police station, fire department, library, and Wonder Feet Museum. We also hosted high school German exchange students who visited our K-2 classrooms and taught students about German life and some fun songs and dances. Last week, we hosted our first school-wide STEAM Day, where students in every classroom rotated through stations, including coding with B-Bots and Ozobots, an art project tied to the book Leaf Man, pattern recognition with pattern blocks, and a chain building activity. Special thanks to our STEAM coaches, Laura, who spearheaded and organized this great event. This Thursday, November 16th, the Northeast PTC is hosting a grocery bingo and fundraiser and community event from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Northeast School. We hope you can come. This month, students at Northeast are spending the month of November practicing and finding examples of our monthly pause character trait, kindness. Our first graders are excited for their upcoming field trip to Billings Farm, where they'll connect their learning and social studies to the historical find. Northeast School Picture will be on Friday, November 17th, and we look forward to hosting our families for Thanksgiving lunch on Tuesday, November 21st. In October, Northwest students had the privilege of hosting the delegation from Hanamaki, Japan. The students from Japan joined our second grade friends in our newly created makerspace, dissecting some owl pellets and digging for bones. They joined students for lunch and recess, then participated in some center activities with our kindergarten friends. It was a great experience for all learners. During the months of November and December, Northwest students will be working on the character trait of gratitude. Last week, our entire school was able to participate in Stuff a Bus. Over the past month, students collected non-perishable items for our local community cupboard. We hosted a family movie night and collected items as well. We had a culminating event in collaboration with Heritage Family Credit Union, and Captain Credit Union paid us a visit. Magician Tom Joyce stopped by to thank the students and put on a show for the extensive amount of food collected. All efforts support the community, and we are focusing on giving back. Northeast and Northwest second grade students came together at RAS for our first music concert of the year. The RAS auditorium was filled with the community. Thank you, Ms. Cole, for coordinating this between the schools. Lastly, check out the latest edition of RCPS Learning Lounge on PEG TV. We were able to gain some insight on Stafford Technical Center. We hosted Baker LaRock, Matt LaRock, Emma Cosgrove, and both Melissa Connor and Kate Bosnick. This show is a great way for our community to stay connected with the wonderful happenings in RCPS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next.
Okay.
Sorry, trying to keep this going.
Thank you. So, RHS Program of Studies update.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm Bianca McKee, and I'm an associate principal at Rutland High School. Here with Mr. Schillinger. We're here to present the Rutland High School Program of Studies noteworthy changes for the 24-25 school year. So every year, Rutland High School publishes a program of studies. This is last year's. Usually this comes out in January ahead of student course registration for the coming school year. And the program of studies includes all of our course offerings, really, what we ultimately offer to students all is dependent upon student interest. So every year, departments take a look at what we're currently offering, and they try to make sure that we're offering elective programming that is something that students would be interested in taking and that students are excited about. And we review, of course, our other courses to make sure required courses are in alignment with district policies. In addition, this year, we asked departments to take a look at the philosophies and do some alignment to the Portrait of a Graduate competencies. So departments are spending some time doing that work, including today we had department meetings. And what I have for you tonight, and you should have this in your packets, but I have copies if people need it, are some of the noteworthy changes. So I'll just take a couple minutes to go through those. In fine arts, we are going to be offering 2 new courses. One of them, Introduction to Piano, we are actually offering this term. We had some flexibility to add the course in, and it filled almost instantaneously, so it was very popular. And we have students asking when we're going to offer it again. So we're excited to offer that as a regular course that students will be able to sign up for. We also are interested in offering musical theater. So we've had various theater classes over the years that have been in the program of studies and haven't gained a lot of traction. And right now, musical theater is sort of trending with students and becoming more popular. So we're hoping that this course might draw some interest for students. And so we will be adding that as an option. The next course in our work-based learning department is Career Experiences. This is also a course that we are already offering this year. So you'll probably recall that at the end of the year last year, we sort of reallocated some resources and staffing and hired a second work-based learning teacher. And with that, we had the flexibility to add this course in. So last year we added a course called Career Experiences that a lot of, Career Exploration that a lot of students are taking that helps them kind of understand what they might be interested in after high school. And then we have had for quite a while now the Place Internship Program. So this course is kind of a course that fits in between those for students who maybe aren't quite ready for a full internship experience but would like to have more time working with community partners and seeing different careers that are out there. We aim to get students actually into the field in sort of mini internships and doing some field trip kinds of opportunities. This year we're offering that as a semester and quarter class, but we think it's going to be better served as a quarter class in the future. Next year, we're hoping to at least put forth to students AP US Politics and Government. So this would be an elective course. We have several AP elective classes in social studies, and ultimately what we would offer would be dependent on student interest. So this is another course that one of our social studies teachers proposed. They've taught it before at another school, and it was very popular with students, so we'd like to put that out there. And finally, in world language, we have 2 new proposed classes, Intro to French Language and Culture and Intro to Spanish Language and Culture. So generally speaking, I would say that we have seen interest in world language decline with students post-COVID, and I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. But so what we're aiming to do is offer a quarter-long introductory course that focuses more on culture and hope to get students who might not normally feel like they want to take a world language to kind of dip their toes into it and see if it's something they're interested in. And we hope that that would then encourage students to pursue languages as they advance through the high school. The other thing I'll say about the program of studies and the changes is none of these would change our staffing levels. Really, ultimately, what we offer to students would be based on student interest, again, and capacity within our current staffing. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a comment. You started talking about the work-based learning, and we have a policy change that we're reviewing for first reading tonight that we talked about the last time the policy committee met about changing the requirements, the graduation requirements to include life skills instead of family and consumer sciences. Am I getting that right?
Correct.
Okay, so this class fits into that.
Yes.
All a part of the plan.
I just have a question about the books. So are those given to students, or are they distributed, or are they just available?
Yeah, so we have hard copies available, but it is electronic. We encourage students to look at it electronically.
Yeah.
We do bring them primarily to our middle school students that are coming into the high school, so they can kind of look through them, and we do a lot of like 8th grade information nights where we might hand them out. We've printed fewer and fewer over the years because most students find it easier to access it online. But we do have a couple copies available if anyone wants a print copy. And when next year's is printed, we will bring copies to the board.
That seems like an awesome asset. We actually, and perhaps we missed it because we were traveling, but my last year 8th grader was gone for the registration. So I don't think he saw that. So we went into registering like, what's available? What do we get? So knowing that this exists for other families is reassuring because it was a little like, I felt like day one for me back in college, like, what do you do? So.
Yeah, and at the high school level, we share it on the announcements as well and send it around to students. And we encourage them to spend some time really looking through it, hopefully with families as well, prior to the course registration. Last year, we began, the school counselors began meeting with students during Flex Block to do some pre-registration planning. And we'll be starting that up actually next month for in upcoming seniors to already begin looking at those courses.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent Olson.
Okay, thank you. I don't think Holden mentioned this. One of the things I wanted to mention tonight was that 2 of our high school seniors were recognized last night, I believe, at the Vermont State Athletic Directors Association banquet. They were student scholarship recipients, and that is for Martha Cotter and Tom Goldberg. There are five boys and 5 girls that are recognized across the state. In Rutland High School had 1 of each. It was great. So that's a great honor for them. Out of those 10 students, they'll come down. The association will pick 2 to represent the state of Vermont and go on to the national recognition. So it's a great honor for the group of 10, great honor for our 2, and great honor for the high school. So congratulations to them. I also wanted to remind the community we're still continuing our safety drills. This week we have some as part of our options-based response protocol, and we're just continuing to notify parents that this is happening. Regarding our strategic plan, last month, right after our board meeting, we had our second design team meeting, if you remember. And that was our group of community members who got together to try to look at the data that we have on the district and come up with objectives that we're shooting for in our strategic plan. That work occurred in the design team level, and then they farmed off the writing part of the work to what we call our writing teams. So we have 3 writing teams working on 3 different objectives for the district. The 3 objectives, one is centered around teaching and learning, one is centered on wellness and community, and one is centered on resources. We call it resources for success, right? Making sure our resources are used the best way to help our students do well. So those writing teams have been working on this for the past couple weeks at least. It's a lot of work actually, and they will continue to work on that and get feedback from different constituencies in the district, and should be done by our next design team meeting, which is December 13th. So that's a reminder for the board. We hope you can make it for that meeting, December 13th, 4 to 6 p.m. at Rutland High School in the theater again. And then that'll be the last piece of feedback that the writing teams get for how they've written up these goals. And writing teams will finalize that work, and we should have the bulk of the plan. And last, I wanted to note that through the consent agenda, the personnel memo, you have named Bianca McKean as our next assistant superintendent, succeeding Rob Bliss. So I wanted to say congratulations to Bianca and the screening team who did that work. They did a lot of work to come to that conclusion. That team was led by Pam Reed, and also included on that team were Marianne Welch, Leah Caesar, Shanda McCarthy, Carol Renfro, Carol Baker, Frank Grice, Melissa Alari, Patricia Eigner, Melissa Connor, Jess Henderson, and from the board we had Karen Bossi, Sarah, and Amaya. So we appreciate the work that everybody did on that. Thank you for that. And I'll say the feedback that the committee had, they were really impressed with Bianca's background as from her experience K through 12, impressed with her experience in the district and outside the district. And in the district, Bianca was a teacher leader for many years at Rutland Middle School, Rutland High School. She was an administrator at Barstow School and also at Rutland High School currently. And we're happy to note that Bianca was a product, or is a product, of the Rutland City Public Schools all the way through. So I don't know, Karen, you're feeling not feeling great, and Amaya, I don't know if there's any other comments you wanted to make. I just wanted to give you the chance. And we had Karen, but I guess Karen's not there. So I guess those are my comments. We're really happy to have Bianca coming on in June, not till June. He still has a lot of work.
I have a question.
Congratulations.
Can I ask what happens until June? Is Rob done before June?
Rob, he's going to put his... Bianca's doing her job and Rob's doing his job.
So we're just going to not have a Rob? Or I thought Rob ended before the end of the school year.
No.
It is June. Okay. Thank you for the clarifying. I was like, oh gosh.
June 30th,
Perfect.
all the way to the end.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you. So now we have the Stafford Technical Center presentation.
Good evening, thank you. I'm Melissa Connor, Director at Stafford, and I'm joined by Kate Bosnich, my Assistant Director. And so I'm going to start out just by providing kind of an overview. We have new people every year, and you only do this once a year, so kind of just a reminder of some of the unique aspects of our budget. So we have a regional advisory board, and as part of that, we have what we call the Finance Committee, which is made up of the superintendents of all of the partner high schools that we have. As well as sometimes school board members will join, and then Ted will usually join as a representative too for Rutland City. So we schedule 2 meetings a year. This year we've had those 2. We might have to have a third. We'll wait and see. But basically they give us a charge each year to develop as conservative of a budget as we can while ensuring that we're providing the quality education that we are known for. So this year, like last year, was especially challenging. Supply costs are still through the roof for us, as they are for everybody. We're seeing, we had anticipated 30 to 55% increases for this year's budget. We're seeing them to be much closer to 45 to 60% in some of our areas, particularly in steel and things like that. Healthcare costs was the big unknown, so we thought we had budgeted appropriately, and then at the end of last week, they came in about 3.5% higher than what we had kind of anticipated on a high end, so we have to make some adjustments for that. And then, of course, our 4 bargaining units are all negotiating, so that's a big unknown for us. So us having to have our budget done so early makes it a real challenge because we have to do a lot of guesstimating. But what we do with that is we do have what they call a 3% threshold in career and tech ed budgets. So basically, because we have to anticipate so early, any surpluses that we, if we overestimate, we are only allowed to keep 3% of that overestimation, and that goes into our reserve fund. The rest is sent back to the towns that send their students to us based on their 6-semester average. And if we were to underestimate, we're only allowed to charge those towns 3%. of whatever their 6th semester average. So it does provide some protection in that capacity. So as I mentioned, healthcare came in about 3.5%. So the budget that we're going to present tonight, we think is fairly accurate, the tuition, but we just got the updated numbers this morning from the business office, and we did not have time to run them before tonight's meeting. But at our December meeting, when we ask you to approve a tuition rate, we will have that updated number, and we'll get the packet out to you early. Personnel is about 70% of our budget, and so we don't anticipate a huge hit, but you just, until we run the numbers and run through special ed bill backs and things like that, it's hard for us to tell. As much as possible, as always, we try to move as much of large equipment purchases out of the local budget into grants, and we've been fairly successful at that over the last few years, and we've been able to make some major equipment purchases through grant funding, and we're going to continue those efforts. One of the things is we've had some deferred maintenance at Stafford. We still have some of the very nice original 1974 drop ceilings that are starting to show their age. We have the original flooring in our hallways, and they're starting to show their age well. They've aged well for 50 years. And so one of the things we're looking to do is to start taking care of some of that deferred maintenance. And so the business office prepared for us kind of where we sit with our reserve fund, and it is healthy. And so what we are proposing and what we will propose and ask for approval to do is to use some of those reserve funds for those areas. So it would include replacing the ceilings in 8 classrooms, replacing the flooring on the entire first floor in the hallways, and we've budgeted for if we run into asbestos abatement to cover the cost for that. And then also a new air compressor, which is aging, that runs many of the pieces of equipment in our shops. So altogether, it's about $150,000. So we think it's just time as we keep growing and putting more stressors on the building that we try to take care of these final details. So there's that. You all received a packet about our budget. And I just want to highlight, this is a unique piece about our budget, is that we bill based on a 6-semester average. So if you look at pages 6 and 7 of your packet, you will see every fall and every spring, October 15th and March 15th, we have to do an enrollment verification. And so we have to submit to the Vermont Agency of Education where all of our students are actually residing and how many students are enrolled. And so we plug that number into this chart, and we have to break it down by town. We send a verification letter out to all of the superintendents. They verify that all of the students are in fact with their district and are residing in the towns that the students tell us that they are, so that we can make sure that we are billing the towns appropriately for the tuition. It's done on a 6-semester average really to prevent any dramatic swings for if suddenly Rutland City went from currently, I think we have 57 students, if suddenly we went up to 102 students, Rutland City is not going to have a huge jump. It's going to take that 6 semesters for that jump it's a slow increase. So it allows for business managers and school budgets to kind of prepare for that. So in fact, this year, Rutland High School has 57 students at Stafford, and right now the billing is for 66.358 students. Last year there was 58 students from Rutland High School, and it was 66.359 students that they were billed for. So it doesn't allow for any dramatic changes. So that's just something that is unique. I mentioned about the 3% window. We really try to make sure that our budget, that we don't have an excess. We really try to cut it right as close as we can. But we also don't want to have to go back and ask any towns for any additional money. So, we build a little bit extra in, again, because of all those unknowns this year, especially with 4 bargaining units negotiating. It's going to be a challenge for us. The other thing in the packet, there is kind of a description of our Perkins grant. So Perkins is a federal grant that we receive each year, and that is on page 3 of the packet. Each year, when it changed a couple of years ago, we now have to do what's called a comprehensive local needs assessment. And for those of you that were here 2 years ago, you sat through a really long presentation from Kate and I about Stafford and the comprehensive local needs assessment. We are so excited that we get to do another one this year. So we have started the process of our comprehensive local needs assessment. We've highlighted the goals that we have for Perkins and what we will include in the grant, but it really comes down to what that comprehensive local needs assessment shows. So we may have to make adjustments. So what we'll be asking you to do at the next board meeting is to approve us accepting the funds, and then at that meeting that we'll have in the spring, we'll share the direction of where we're going to be spending those funds. But we do have to get approval for you to accept the funds from the Agency of Education. So that will happen. Additionally, we, with Perkins, one of our long goals that was part of our strategic plan was the addition of a pre-tech exploratory program that will be grant funded for the first couple of years. We actually have to apply and we have to receive the grants. So our hope to start getting that in place so that we can get staffing and curriculum and everything developed. Part of that would be funded through Perkins and part through a competitive grant. The timing of Agency of Ed grants are really hard for hiring because we will not find out about those grants until the end of June. So it does make it a little bit of a challenge. But we are hopeful. We've been putting all the pieces. We've been examining different pre-tech exploratory programs around the state, and these are geared towards sophomores who really don't know what they want to do and are really struggling to figure out kind of their path. And so what it would allow us to do is to bring in sophomores for, we're still kind of figuring out the schedule, whether it be a half-day or a full-day program, and they would be able to explore within all the career pathways that are available at Stafford and learn about what they like and what they don't like, which is sometimes just as important to figure out what you don't like. I always tell the students, I changed my major 5 times in college, and it was really expensive to do that, so figure it out ahead of time. So there's that. And then with that, Kate is going to walk you through kind of the real nitty-gritty details of the budget, and then I'll share the next steps.
So I get the exciting numbers part. So I'll be reviewing our proposed budget on page 5 of your packet. Melissa gave you the overview of how the budget was prepared and the process that we go through each year. So on page 5, what we use each year is our anticipated allocation for the Perkins Fund. We don't get the allocation until the spring for the following fiscal year. So this year for the FY25 budget, we are using what we received this year. So that's $351,148. We're basing this again on what we received last fiscal year. And then our budget for FY25 was, we use the FY24 base education rate, which typically rises about 3% based on the inflation. So we use this calculation when estimating the overhead assistance, which is used and provided by the state. And as you move down the FY25 proposed column, our total direct expenditures for FY25 represent an increase from FY24 to 25 of 5.3%. So when we asked our program instructors and academic teachers to think about what they need to continue our programs and our academics and to make them still competitive and meet industry standards while being conservative as well, because we still want to continue to have that competitive advantage and keep going strong. So they met the task and they prepared budgets that will serve our students very well. So keeping that in mind, with the rising healthcare costs, salary increases, and the overall supply costs, we did the best that we could, and offsetting our new equipment purchases with grants coming through, and then moving our building repairs to our reserve funds. We put together what we believe to be a very fiscally responsible budget. So with this work, this resulted in our total expenditures increasing by 4.2%. So when comparing the FY25 expenditures to FY24, they're actually down 2.9%. Our total revenues for FY25 are also down 1.7%, but this is because our Perkins allocation for FY25 has decreased when compared to FY24. It's down about $51,000. So based on these figures, our net expenditures have increased by 7% overall, and our anticipated FY tuition rate, or excuse me, FY25 tuition rate at this time is $21,258 per student. So this dollar amount is calculated by taking the net expenditures and dividing it by our 6-semester average, which Melissa reviewed at the beginning of the presentation. So we might come back again in December and say our tuition rate is changed slightly based on the healthcare costs and what that will do with that increased 3.5%. So stay tuned for that. But at this point, Melissa will review our next steps in the budget process.
Can I ask a question really quick about that while we're on it, maybe?
Sure. Sure.
Just 2 questions, I guess. I'm wondering, what's the decrease in the building and grounds? Because that's a big decrease. And secondly, I'm just curious about why is there such a decrease in the grant again? Maybe I missed it.
Rock, paper, scissors?
Sure. I always lose, so. As far as building and grounds, last year we had included renovation costs for our video communications classroom. So it's down because we don't have that cost. And also some of the, we usually budget like $15,000 to $20,000 for deferred maintenance projects. We're moving all of that into that reserve fund. So that was an area that we could save there. So those are the 2 factors that went into that. In terms of the Perkins grant, the Agency of Education realized that they had a calculation error, and we were getting credit for about 5 or 6 years for students that did not belong to us. Thankfully, they did not make us repay that money because that would have been about $250,000. They kind of ate that one as it was their error, but that was when they realigned districts with a lot of the merging. Some towns didn't get moved from one of their spreadsheets over to the correct new district in sending. So that was why we received the district.
It kind of worked out because you had the decrease in the grounds and saved there.
Yeah. Last year we had built a budget for Perkins with that $51,000, so we had to make some dramatic changes at the last minute. So that was a challenge. So the next steps. Sorry.
So the tuition amount.
Yes.
Each sending district pays that amount?
The town of residence for the student as part of their education tax bill, and it's based on that 6-semester average that's highlighted.
Okay, great.
So the next steps, we are obviously going to be going back and recalculating our budget with the increase in healthcare to see what impact that has. We will, as our process goes, we will run that through the RAB Finance Committee just to make sure that they are fine with any changes. We're not anticipating a huge change, but we want to just make sure. I never like to say we're not anticipating and then find out we are anticipating. So we'll run that through just so that we have the process. And then the RAB Finance Committee is the group that will make the recommendation to move the budget forward to our full regional advisory board. That happens on December 6th. They will give basically the same presentation to them. They will hopefully approve it to be moved forward to this board, and that will happen on December 12th. And that's where we would look and hope for our budget to be ratified so that we can announce a tuition rate to all of our partner high schools so that they can then use it in building their budgets. So that's kind of why we're so early. Also at that meeting, as I mentioned earlier, we'll be looking for approval to accept the Perkins funds from the Vermont Agency of Education, as well as approval to use our reserve funds for those deferred maintenance costs. So we are happy to answer any additional questions.
I have a question. These trends for enrollment,
yes.
Do any of them surprise you? Or are they kind of what you anticipated?
I think it's what we've seen, and we included that this year because it was asked at the last board meeting, kind of how Stafford's enrollments are compared to our partner high schools.
Yeah.
And so I just went to the AOE dashboard for enrollments. When I look at the numbers, I kind of scratch my head based on the number of students that I see at the school. So, but I wanted to be consistent. No, I really don't think that there was, a big surprise. I know, some of the redistricting, we're seeing a lot of school choice. We noticed that students will start with us as one high school, and the next year they're with a different high school because they got into a lottery for school choice. I think in terms of, I think it follows the demographics that we're seeing statewide. I don't think there was really, the overall, when I looked at the overall population of students, it's just shifting which schools that they're at.
Sure.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we have the maintenance and capital plan. Glenn Scott and Ted Menos.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Glenn Scott, Director of Buildings, Grounds, and Transportation for the district. I'm going to present to you one slide, and that is basically our capital budget plan for FY25. I'll go straight to the bottom line. Basically, this is about a $720,000 budget for this year. That is about $300,000 less than current year. And you'll notice that we've had our foot on the gas with a lot of larger projects. This year we're backing off on some of the larger projects, and we're working to address a lot of the smaller repairs that are reached the end of their life but definitely need to be addressed. And you'll see I highlighted them in red. There's a number of safety issues that we've addressed or need to address based on inspection reports and the wear and tear and the lifespan. But I'll just go through this and kind of hit the highlights. We're going to work on a couple flooring replacements in the middle school. We've been on this path of replacing flooring and getting rid of some of the asbestos flooring, but to keep that in a rotation at the middle school, we'll do 2 classrooms in FY25. We've been on a path to do some sidewalk and pavement repairs at the high school. This is a lot of the original 1993 pavement and the steps. I'm sorry, the asphalt sidewalks that need to be replaced. So that's $100,000 that we budgeted. The high school stormwater project, if you've been in some of the building committees and following along with the stormwater project, is a stormwater mandate that we have to basically capture stormwater at the high school. The total project is $650,000. The district is only responsible for $10,000, so that's our share of construction cost and or leverage costs. So that'll be included in that budget as well. And then high school, there's some basketball hoops, some safety repairs that need to be made, and also the gym curtain that's the original gym curtain, the mechanics. So it's the curtain and the motors and all the safety rigging that holds that up. So we'll be replacing that. At Northeast, there's some masonry repairs, steps out back, some sidewalk, and steps out front that just need to be buttoned up and repaired or replaced. And also the library roof is at the end of its life, so we'll be actually we'll have a large portion of that roof after the last 2 years. We've done a lot of roof work there at Northeast. It's well needed. And then in the Rutland Intermediate School auditorium, we've done a major upgrade, as you know, but last year we had a safety inspection of the stage and lighting and rigging. All of the lighting in there up above is basically, I think that's close to 60 years old, so we're going to get rid of all that wiring and the lighting, upgrade that. And then the basketball hoops in the intermediate school gym, we're timing that with some flooring replacement, which we've spoken about in the building committee. And then again, staying on the rotation cycle of replacing 2 buses for next year. That would be the 2 buses with cameras. And then one of our maintenance fleet vehicles will need to be replaced in part of that rotation as well. That will include a plow and a cap, because we use these. A lot of wear and tear, plowing, and maintenance throughout the winter.
Do we do all of our plowing in the district in-house?
Correct, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We've got two salters, and the rest of all of our maintenance vehicles plow.
Very cool.
Thank you. Any other questions?
The stormwater project, is it 10% that we're covering? I think you said $10,000.
10%.
Yeah,
You meant
10%.
Yeah.
That we have to
You
cover.
mean 10%?
10%.
Not 10,000.
Yeah.
And hence the 65. You're right.
You're right, okay. I thought you said $10,000, but maybe I wasn't hearing.
Glenn, are we doing these projects in-house, or do you have to get vendors?
All of those will be done with vendors, outside vendors, correct. Yeah. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a request. Stephanie's not here to do the building committee report. Can you fill in for that later?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You could just stay right there because we're going to hear from Ted, and then we could go right back to you.
Back to the building
Sounds good.
committee. Does that work?
Sounds great. Perfect. Get this little slideshow. There we go. Almost. There we go. Oh, good. I might need these arrows. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for your time. Just I'm going to go over some of the basic scope and assumptions that we have for the fiscal 25 budget as were reviewed and endorsed by the Finance Committee a week ago. This is going to be an overview of some of the key drivers in order to get your questions or comments about these assumptions. The plan is then, with your guidance, to return next month with a fully vetted proposal with appropriate detail for your consideration. So at a high level, one of the key drivers, of course, is the assumption that we make on staffing, since personnel costs are typically about 75 to 80% of our overall budget cost. And at this time, we're anticipating that our staffing levels for fiscal 25 will remain about flat with 24, plus or minus a percent or so. One interesting thing is that the ESSER-funded positions are being eliminated because, of course, ESSER sunsets in September of 24, and we're rolling a few into our operations. All of that's occurring without creating a spike in employment. So we had planned as carefully as possible for the so-called fiscal cliff. Obviously, we knew it was coming, so we were careful in how we utilized those ESSER dollars for funding staff positions. So even though the grants sunset in September, which is 3 months into the new fiscal year, we are assuming no ESSER grant funding to be used or expended in fiscal 25. As you might recall, we had fully budgeted all of the remaining ESSER grant funding for this fiscal year. As has been mentioned by a few other speakers tonight, we do have labor negotiations coming up in this fiscal year. All 4 of our labor union agreements expire simultaneously on June 30th, 2024. So the Staff Relations Committee and a number of other people from the administration are working together to plan for those negotiations. But in the meantime, from a budgetary standpoint, we are basically assuming that the unions in the district will agree upon a range of new money, we call it percentage new money or increases, that will hopefully maintain the general alignment of our compensation levels in the coming year with nearby school systems. And to help give us direction in that regard, we've been doing some extensive benchmarking of other school systems, more than half a dozen, to ensure that we're maintaining the position that we've had actually for a number of years, which is relatively favorable compensation for like-kind jobs between Rutland City Public Schools and others. Because, as you'll hopefully recall, one of the key policies that our district has is to provide and manage a system of compensation that will be effective and successful in retaining, attracting, and motivating the highest quality employees. And those words, the highest quality employees, are a direct quote from the policy. Medical plan, you've heard about that. We were assuming perhaps, 12 or 13% increases. They've come in at 16.4% on average. There is a range from about 15% to 15.7 to 16.7 because there are 4 different plans that are offered to employees. It's actually a relatively tight range. Sometimes the spread is higher depending upon the plan. But we're working those costs into our budget. Our open enrollment period for the medical plan just concluded yesterday, so we're actually going to begin rolling data into our budget planning based upon the elections, the by-plan elections of our employees. So to the extent that we can complete that in time for the full budget, that's going to give us a lot more accuracy, which is always helpful. And of course, Melissa and Kate updated you earlier on the STC plans. As she described, I think that's quite an achievement to maintain the tuition increase to 7% or less. Anybody have any comments or questions about these first set of assumptions? Okay, let's move on then. We're also including in fiscal '25 a second installment of $250,000 specifically earmarked to help replace the artificial turf at Alumni Field. As you have heard and the building committee has heard from Glenn in prior meetings, that turf has reached the end of its natural life, in fact, beyond its rated life, I should say. And so based upon the condition and safety considerations, it was decided that we should move ahead with that in the summer of '24. With that decision earlier, we included $250,000 in this year's fiscal '24 budget so that work could begin and so that we could place orders ahead of time, given the lead time needed to get the materials and have the services lined up. We're planning to include a second installment in the fiscal '25 budget to provide for the work being completed after June 30th, but still during the summer of 2024. We're going to tweak this assumption and some other financing ideas depending upon where the final bids come in. They're coming in, they're being reviewed, and a vendor recommendation will be presented to the board in December, at which time we will fine-tune these numbers as well. A smaller item, but one that I think is noteworthy, is that we have increased the athletics budget by $36,000 in fiscal '25 to provide for new uniforms for our sports teams. You might recall that Greg and Mike Norman have discussed in the past a multi-year schedule to refresh those uniforms consistent with, district policy and standards. In the past, the Boosters Club has very generously underwritten some of these uniform costs, but the board decided that it would also be good to make sure that we include an appropriate complement of funds so that can happen. And to the extent that frees up funding from the Booster Club to help in other areas, that's a good thing. We're also anticipating higher fees that are paid to game officials in the coming year, so we've made provision for that. Those game official fees had not been increased in several years, and to ensure that they can continue to attract people to do that work, those costs, like many others, are going up. Glenn's talked about the building, grounds, and transportation, a major portion of the capital work. But basically, we're anticipating at a high level those costs to go down about 10%, or $200,000 or $300,000, with the shift to smaller projects, as Glenn described. So one way to think about this is it's not so much a reduction of costs. It's not so much that our costs are going down. It's a change in the mix of which projects we're doing, and these cost fewer dollars for '25. IT, again, we're expecting a few ups and possible downs, but no material net changes. The one exception to that, which will basically be a 2024 expense, is the school board did approve an upgrade for the district's financial accounting system, which we're in the process of beginning. I expect that to be completed by June 30th, and so I don't expect it to hit the '25 budget, but I just want to let you know that work, which is probably going to cost on the order of about $100,000, is underway. Food service costs. Every year, we take a look at what those are going to be based upon AOE guidance. In this particular year, we're going to reset those costs with a rebidding. We're in the last of a 5-year agreement with our current vendor, so come January, we're going to be speaking with the AOE to get them to approve our draft of a request for proposal. We'll go out to bid. We'll, of course, come back to the board for review and approval once we get those bids. But what that rebidding process allows the vendors to do is, rather than being capped at a designated CPI change per year, and in recent years it's been 6-7%, now vendors can make a bid at whatever cost level and whatever cost structure they like. So it's possible that our unit costs might go up a few percent consistent with food inflation, or it could be that they're higher than that. And of course, it could be possible that they are lower depending upon competition and efficiencies. But we got a little bit more variability on that for the coming budget. Regarding our all-important federal grant funding other than ESSER, and that's many millions of dollars each year, the best guidance we have from AOE and from the U.S. Department of Education is that in spite of all the budget trials and tribulations we hear about at the federal level, education funding will stay about the same. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding those assumptions? Okay, now we get into something a little bit more uncertain. And that has to do with how the state is funding education across Vermont. So for fiscal '25, we're expecting a number of fairly significant changes in terms of the funding formula that's used to allocate roughly $2 billion of education spending throughout Vermont. A number of these factors are basically at this time expected to be of minimal net benefit to our particular district, and I must say that every district is different. You might recall that we have been involved earlier in the advocacy to implement the 2019 UVM study to update the student weightings that are used in the metrics for allocating the funds across the state. Today, I was in a teleconference in which one of the members of the VSA acknowledged that those original metrics, which have been used for more than 20 years, basically had no tie to empirical data. They were selected at a particular point in time, and by the way, that was the conclusion of the 2019 UVM study, as they could find no previous empirical data that was used to set those all-important allocation metrics. So the good news is now they've relied upon the UVM study results to update those metrics. The not so good news for our particular district is, since that study was published as part of the legislation by the state, they established a task force which worked for 6 months on legislation to implement those recommendations. And in the process of that, they made changes that basically revise the impact of the UVM study recommendations. And among those changes, they significantly diluted the recommended increase in weightings for the poverty factor. So we're benefiting less than what we had expected to do. Another interesting thing is, because Rutland City, although many of our families are in the lower income bracket, we're urban, of course, whereas the UVM study recommended increasing the weights for those schools that are far more rural, spread out, and therefore incur many extra costs. So by implementing more weight to the rural school districts, our school district is not benefiting as much as we used to. And those two effects currently look like they're roughly setting off. I think we'll be a little bit better, but not with what was expected. And probably in what I've heard some people describe as one of the largest changes of potentially 30 years is a change in the calculation of education spending per pupil. And that education spending per pupil is extremely important, because that is the main driver of what the tax rate ends up being. And we could talk about those mechanics at a later time. But you've heard me talking about, and my predecessors talking about, the calculation of equalized pupils, which the weights are used to come up with. And effective in '25, AOE is using a new metric as part of its implementation of all these changes that's called long-term weighted average daily membership. It should be an interesting signal to you that we're going from 2 words to 6 words to describe to describe this term. And while the factor probably is not quite three times as complicated, it's nevertheless in some respects more complicated. It's certainly less understood at this time, and so that we'll be going through the analysis of that. One factor that is not uncertain in terms of its impact on us, like the previous ones I just described, is something called the Census Block Grant from the AOE. And unfortunately for Rutland City Public Schools, based upon changes that are again related to this Act 127 implementation, we're currently expecting, based on initial AOE guidance, that the Census Block Grant revenue to Rutland City Public School is going to decline by a few $100,000 from '24 to '25. Many of you probably know that once the budget is all set and done, then there are a number of factors that are determined by the state which ultimately result in the local tax rate, which we refer to as the homestead property tax rate. But this is something called a yield that drives that. And basically the thing to think about is the higher that yield, the lower your tax rate, just depending upon other factors staying the same. And the idea is because the homestead property yield, its name derives from the fact that it's intended to convey how many dollars of education spending you can have for $1 of taxation. And we're going to learn a lot more about this come December 1st, because on December 1st of every year, by statute, the Vermont Department of Taxes is required to release a guidance letter, which then sets assumptions for that homestead property yield. So by the time we meet next month, that data will be out and we'll have some idea. Right now, the indication is it could drop significantly. But since there are many factors involved in the calculation of tax rate, we can't say with any precision at this time how much of an impact that's going to have. The only other comment that I'll make is, well, we have to be realistic and sensitive to the potential impact of our budgetary decisions on the local community and the tax rate. We, as a matter of practice, do not budget to the tax rate. We budget to what the administration, with board guidance, tell us is needed in order to maintain plans for educational programs and operations to maintain the academic standards of excellence that this district has for so long achieved. So more to come on that. And I know that's a lot to throw at you, but the main message is there's more uncertainty than usual right now, and in the past there's been plenty of uncertainty regarding what the changes in the education funding formula are going to do. I know that some of my peers in other school systems are starting to make those estimates, but as somebody very wise has also said, I'm not going to get out in front of making those assumptions for now because there's still too much variability and it could just as likely be misleading as helpful. So I'll stop there and ask if anybody has questions or suggestions or comments on these assumptions.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Why such a, and maybe this isn't a significant number, but $400,000 seems like a lot of money. Why such a drop in the grant?
Okay, so the answer to that question is based upon how the Agency of Education has made certain calculations in terms of what it deems to be the average cost across the state to educate, provide special education services per student. Okay, so we're talking this census grant basically applies to special education services. And in the past, just for reference, we were on a reimbursement model whereby if we spent $100 on these qualifying services, then the state would reimburse us by 56% of those. And for certain situations where there were extraordinarily high costs for necessary purposes, they would reimburse up to 90% of some of those costs. Well, as part of some of the changes that are going on, they decided to switch, the legislature decided to switch to a block grant system. That is a totally different paradigm, because what they're saying is, now we're not going to compensate you based upon the costs to provide the services that we require you to provide. Now we're going to say what you should spend on average, looking across the state, is, and I think the number that they're projecting for fiscal '27 is just approximately $2,400, okay? Now, if you're currently spending $4,500 per student, and the goal is to get to $2,300, what they're going to do is they're going to start stepping you down in quarter increments, so that come fiscal '27, you're at a target that the AOE is setting. And this is the situation which our district is in, okay? There are some districts that are spending less per pupil for these kinds of services, and their block grant will actually go up, because they will be stepped up to that median number. So that is basically the rationale. The philosophical problem that many of us have with that is, it obviously is based on the assumption that there is a standard student that can be educated at a standard cost wherever you are in the state. And that's highly questionable, and it also is in direct conflict with our equity and inclusion principles, which says everybody is different. We endeavor to meet them where they are and do the best we can for their success. That doesn't require a standard cost per student, but that's what the legislature has decided.
How, ballpark, if you don't know, like how much of a percentage decrease is that for our special ed budget?
Well, I'm not going to give you a percentage.
That's okay, just
and what I could do is I could give you what several $100,000 is a percentage of the previous block grant, or what it was as a percentage of the reimbursement rate years before that. But because these dollars are fungible, and because categories can be balanced and rebalanced in different ways, I just believe a percentage would be misleading.
Sure. I'm just curious, like how much of
Sure.
an impact that's going to be on our
Sure, but
special ed.
one way to think about it is our district's average cost for a teacher in this fiscal year, '24, when you combine salary plus benefits, and then average, you always have to be careful with averages, because there are lots of games you can play with averages. But if you take simply our total cost for salary and benefits and divide by the number of teachers, straight, simple average like that, it's $100,000. So every $100,000 that you lose in revenue, is basically equivalent to a teacher, which means we have to find efficiencies somewhere else, because we don't want to lose people. So it's a challenge. Anyway, but that's what our legislators in Montpelier have decided.
Thanks, Ted.
You're very welcome. Any other questions or comments about that? Yes.
I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you did on behalf of our district with the new legislation, and it must be very frustrating to have it not bear out. Your effort, you worked, you did so much.
I appreciate that very much. Well, and I had some people working closely with me, including the former chair, Allison Knott, and a number of other members of the board. One of the reasons I put the effort into that, and I appreciate you recognizing that, because it was pretty substantial over the course of more than a year, including weekly meetings, but I realized that this was of very high importance to the district, and therefore very high return on invested effort, and also in order to do the best we could possibly do for our community and our students, and then to be able to say honestly we did everything we could think of doing, that was a really high priority to me. I'm not so much frustrated, I am just extremely disappointed. And it's not because my effort didn't result, and the efforts of many of my peers didn't result in what we were hoping to achieve. It's because I watched a process take an excellent empirical study, which nobody impugned in any respect in terms of its integrity and its measurement, and then I watched competing political interests start to work with and change that over the course of a 6-month task force. It was quite interesting to watch, and as you know, because I think you even gave public comment at one point for us, Kathy, and that was really helpful. It seemed like there was a goal, and it wasn't necessarily what the UVM study had identified. So we did what we could. Well, as I've said before in other questions and issues, the answer is out there, we just have to find it. So, whatever the percentage might be, we will work the overall budget in a way that provides Bill and the administration with the resources they need, where they need it, to maintain the excellence that, we've enjoyed for so long while supporting our hardworking teachers and staff. But thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, believe me, and an honor. So, one or two more quick slides for you. So what does that mean? Where's this going to put us? So the next couple of charts show you two different numbers for the current year budget. And the one that the voters approved, of course, was $74 million, which included $13.5 million of ESSER grant funds, which, of course, are sunsetting. So my point to this is to say, really, when we start to look at 24 versus 25 having no ESSER funds, let's think about our budget having been about $60.6 million, excluding the ESSER funds for this year, okay? Since those are one time. With that in mind, right now, based upon our preliminary outlook and working with directors and administrative leaders and others at a high level, we're anticipating about a 4% increase in the budget, or close to $2.5 million. Please don't be disappointed if we come back in December and I tell you it's 6 or 7%. It's possible. We'll try not to do that. But at this point in time, the big drivers in our estimate are the medical plan. We spend over $6 million a year to provide medical benefits to our employees. That's the district's 80% share. Multiply that by a 16% increase and you have $1 million increase cost. So that's one of the largest drivers. Other employee compensation, including some assumed ranges for salary increases, which of course are to be negotiated, as well as a few other benefits, about $1.5 million. We're anticipating some direct instructional costs to reflect inflation. That's likely to go up a few $100,000, although you can thank Mr. Scott for finding some savings in buildings and grounds to partially offset that. So right now, it's looking like about $63 million. I do not expect it to be any less than that, and we're going to try and keep it from increasing significantly when we come back next time. When we come back in December, of course, we're going to review a proposed budget with related detail with the Finance Committee first on December 5th. Anybody who's on the board is, of course, welcome to participate in that if you wish, if you have the time and interest. We'll take the committee's guidance, as always, and in the ensuing week, we'll make any updates or revisions or provide any additional analysis in order to present to the full board a proposed budget for fiscal 25. And the idea behind that is to give you approximately a month to think about that proposal before you're asked in January to approve a final budget. And in the course of that month, if we need to have any special meetings or if you need to send requests for additional information to help you make a better decision, that's an important part of the business office job, and we look forward to supporting you in any respect, because as you've heard from many people, there are a lot of challenges, and we just want to collectively make the best decisions we can. So can I provide any other information tonight for you? Well, thank you so much for your support and your guidance, and I look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Get a vaccine.
Back to Glenn.
Hi there. So I'm going to give a quick overview of our Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. There were 6 items, basically. 2 items were included in the consent agenda, and number 1 was our HVAC phase 2, 3A, 3A HVAC project, and that included our building controls, which you all approved tonight, and then the other consent agenda item was our pellet bids, which was also included. We gave an update on ESSER Phase 3, B, which is our final HVAC ESSER project, which includes it's a omnibus project of many air handlers, repairs. It's all the final things that we have found based on our work with Johnson Controls and our air quality study. That RFP is out on the street, and it will be returned in 60 days. I just shared our capital plan. We shared that in our building committee. And then a quick update on our intermediate school gym floor. As you know, we had a flood that basically third grade classrooms and then the gym floor. And what I shared in the building committee was that there were two options we were looking at getting quotes for, was replacing the wooden sub base that went over concrete, and then there was a rubber floor which is existing. Our contractor came back and gave us the quote to replace like for like, so wood floor, rubber gym floor, and then the alternate cost, which is the optimal solution, was to pour additional concrete about 3 inches to get it up to level so it meets the steps level, and then pour 1.5 inches of rubber sub floor, like rubber gym floor. That option came in about $40,000 cheaper. So VSBIT, our insurance provider, approved that, so we're working on right now the timeline to install that. We haven't decided yet, but I'll be working with athletics, because middle school plays basketball in there. There's a number of sports, and also obviously we teach phys ed in there. So we can't wait until summer based on the vendors' current projects that are lined up. So we're going to try to get it, pushed back as far as possible, but not to go into summer, so that we can still get it done this year. So working on timelines there. And then as Ted shared, we provided an update on high school alumni field, the artificial turf. Basically the update was that we had met with a couple of vendors. We shared an update with the building committee about the products that were shared. We shared some of the approaches we were looking at in terms of safety, the quality of products, and then what we had asked for to be included in that bid, which was replacement of the turf, but then also we wanted to replace the goal posts to the traditional style gooseneck, that then you could have roll-out soccer nets, lacrosse posts, and then Mike Norman wanted us to look at the option of having a shot clock for both ends of the shot clock / play clock. I think I keep saying shot clock, but it's more like a play clock. So we provided an update on that. Next, we have bids, and we're actually going to be reviewing those bids in the next week. December 5th, we'll have a recommendation to the building committee, finance committee, and then December 12th, we'll have a final recommendation and total cost for that project. So, any questions that I can answer? All right.
Thank you very much. That's much more coherent than I would have done.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
You're up. I'm up. All right. Ted, first I want to thank Ted for finding the date that was wrong in the meeting minutes, and thank him for my excellent notes here as well. So, yeah. At our Finance Committee meeting on November 7th, we did cover 3 main topics: the audit update, the budget update, and the strategic plan update. The audit update was provided by Mr. Rick Brigham, who has been the partner in charge of both of our audits that we just completed, fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22. He shared his assessment of the district's system of business controls. It was also an opportunity for the committee members to ask questions directly of Mr. Brigham. The report was very favorable, of course. He said that we have strong controls in place, that fund balances are healthy, and that there were no compliance issues related to reporting for federal awards. He also said that the fiscal year 21 audit received a clean opinion. He said that the fiscal year 22 would also have received a clean opinion except for one qualification that was necessary. The district does need to implement a new accounting standard which reformats how leases are reported. We were assured that by Charlene, as well as other people, Mr. Brigham, that this was not a big qualification for us to handle. The district will implement, and I mentioned because you work in accounting, so it's very helpful, right? So it's nice to have you on that committee. Thank you. The district will implement that new accounting standard certainly for fiscal year 23, so that we anticipate a clean finding for the upcoming audit of last year. Anyway, so Mr. Brigham did mention that the audit of fiscal year 23 is underway. The business office is providing the necessary documentation this month. The auditors and our business office are committed to filing this audit on time in March of 24. And that was topic number 1. Topic number 2 was the budget, which I think we just got a pretty awesome report on, so I'll leave it at that. Topic 3 was, of course, our progress on the strategic plan, which Bill's superintendent report did cover. And so just a couple quick highlights. The writing teams for each of the 3 goal areas have completed their first drafts, and I think on behalf of the Finance and Planning Committee, we are so grateful for the time and effort that those writing teams have put in. We were on a meeting today seeing that first draft, and it is incredible what those 3 groups have done in such a short amount of time. So thank you for that. There was a consolidated, like I said, we talked about that there's going to be a consolidated draft of the plan for the next design team meeting, which of course is December 13th at the high school from 4 to 6. We do encourage everyone to attend who can attend that. Our next committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 5th, after the building committee at 6 p.m. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And now we have the policy committee report.
Okay, not a whole lot to report. I think the primary change has to do with we're not providing chocolate for approval of policies anymore, so we were not as productive. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. No, just kidding. We spent a lot of time on a travel reimbursement policy and ended up not changing it much at all. We added per diem limits in addition to budgeted funds in one line there. We also made the change to the graduation requirements that Greg and Bianca talked about earlier that had to do with sort of phasing out family and consumer sciences requirements and changing that to life skills, which plays into the more employment-oriented kinds of coursework and expectations that I think is very appropriate for today's high school students. Our next meeting is November 21st at 5 o'clock. Okay. Did I get that right? Okay. And that's all?
Well, folks. Thank you. And next we have unfinished business, which includes the Declaration of Inclusion statement. And Bill?
Yeah, I can start if, and I'll try to be really brief and concise, I hope. We had, coming to the policy meeting and then to the board, to the full board, over the last 6 weeks or 2 months, some leaders in the community who asked us if we would consider, if the board would consider adopting this Declaration of Inclusion. It's been adopted all around the state by towns and in other entities, including one school district. And our Board of Aldermen have also adopted it. So the question is for whether this board would adopt it as well. I look at this as, I have to compliment the writing of it. It's very clear, it's very simple, and to me it's clear and simple. But if you'll indulge me to read it for 2 seconds, the first paragraph says, Rutland City Schools of Rutland, Vermont, condemns racism and welcomes all persons, regardless of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, age, disability, or socioeconomic status, and wants everyone to feel safe and welcome in our community. I can speak for myself, and I think I can speak for the good staff in our district that we want everyone to feel safe and welcome in our community. The second paragraph, as a school district, we formally condemn all discrimination in all its forms, commit to fair and equal treatment of everyone in our community, and will strive to ensure that all our actions, policies, and operating procedures reflect this commitment. I can speak for myself, and I'm sure I can speak for the rest of the district, that we are committed to fair and equal treatment of everyone in our community. We want that to happen. So I think it's that simple. I know that sometimes in organizations, institutions, you have to restate what you believe in, like we did over there with the Portrait of a Graduate. We went through a big year-long process to talk about, we teach critical thinking, and we teach integrity, and we teach wellness and collaboration, thank you, and adaptability and communication. All of those things that, we do that in schools, but sometimes it's important to say, we really believe in doing this. And I think this is the same idea. This is a good vision statement for what we believe in. And legally, we have to do this, but it's good to say, yes, we want to do this, and we want to make sure that we're doing it well. So I hope that the board would consider it. I support it, and I think the rest of the district feels it's important as well.
Mary Beth?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the Declaration of Inclusion as it is written in our board packet and is just read by Superintendent Olson.
Second.
So what we're going to do, since we've had a lot of conversation, we had the committee meeting, and then we spoke for 45 minutes, an hour at the last full board meeting, is we're going to make our way around to each commissioner and Amaya, our student rep, and each person, if they feel they have something to add, then you'll have time to share your thoughts. It's okay to pass if you don't think you have, if you don't feel you have anything to add. And then after every commissioner and our student rep has had an opportunity to share, we'll have a roll call vote. Okay, so start with you. Charlene, please.
I don't have anything to add. I think Bill said it all.
Okay. I just have a couple things to add. I think it's really important that our superintendent and our student reps spoke up the last time we talked about this and said, this is a good idea. I think it's also been noted that it's great for welcoming people to our community, which we need to do economically. And I think it's a great idea.
I hope you can hear me because I have a mask on. I think it's really important to state it out loud because it's something we have to do legally, but it's also stating it out loud. People who want to come to our school sometimes look for this kind of declaration that, is this school welcoming? Will they put it out there and say, yes, we are welcoming, and yes, we will accept you? And to be able to see that and see that it's signed and hear that a board of people representing the school say, yes, we are, and yes, we commit to that is important. So my feeling on this is we all agree that we strive every day, every way possible to be the most inclusive to all, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, everything, orientation, everything. We embody that in the Portrait of a Graduate. We are spending so much time to do what we can to embody the Portrait of a Graduate. And as a community, I think we do a great job. As a school, I think we do an amazing job. Creating a piece of paper feels very political to me, and the way it's been kind of pushed feels kind of inappropriate and political to me. And because of that, I don't think that people will look at our community and say, how many pieces of paper do you have? I think people are looking at our schools and how amazing the children are, how amazing our Portrait of a Graduate is, how everyone is reaching out to each other. It's beyond heartwarming to see how the schools are operating, and actually for those of us who go to the schools and have kids in them, that's what people are looking at when they come to our community. They're not looking for how many pieces of paper are filed away. So this gives me actually a kind of a bit of a political icky feeling.
Speaking as somebody who fits a fair amount of these things here, and my family does. I am a gender non-conforming, queer, polyamorous person. I have a spouse who is trans, non-binary. We live with our girlfriend. And we feel the privilege that we can actually go out and go to our school events all together and feel safe. But there's a lot of people out there that don't feel safe still, that don't feel safe coming out. And so that's why we need a piece of paper that shows that we are committed to condemning discrimination and that we are actively inclusive.
Me? I'm great with it. Whatever Bill said. All about it. Thank you.
I appreciate this piece of paper because even in our schools, I know we do have great schools and we do have teachers and staff that want to support all these. I have felt personal attacks or discrimination based on what I look like, based on my skin color, within the schools from staff and from kids. So I think with this paper, there's something to refer to and people can feel safe and people can feel included.
Mary Beth?
I think it's all been said. Thank you. I think it's great.
Okay. So we'll take a roll call vote. You want to go ahead?
Sure. Sarah Atkins Dunges?
Yes.
Is Karen on?
Karen's not on,
Karen's
no.
not. Okay. Ryan Carney?
Yes.
Courtney Collins?
Yes.
Heather Hauk?
No.
Kevin Kiefaber?
Yes.
No. Tricia, Charlene?
Yes.
No. Stephanie? I vote yes. And that's 6-1. We don't need Kathy to vote, so motion passes 6-1.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to new business. Do you have any new business, Bill? Or new business? No?
No.
Okay, so we have an executive session. I entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of consideration of contractual matters and for the evaluation of the superintendent, the premature release of information regarding those subjects which would place the board at a substantial disadvantage. And would like to invite Bill Olson, Bianca McKean, and Ted Plaminos.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.